Hi there, and welcome to Social Capital Matters. I'm your host, Kylie Taylor. On this show, we take a deep dive into the ideas around social capital by talking to business and industry leaders about how they use it to collaborate with stakeholders and build a framework for long-term success. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Social Capital Matters. We've got a great show for you today with another great guest to chat with. My producer, Greg, is here with me from Bangkok. How are you, Greg?
Hey, Kylie, I'm doing well. It's been a very hot summer in Thailand this year. That's okay, though, because I've got my aircon cranked, my room is cold, and I'm ready to go. So how about you lead us into the guest for this episode?
Great. Well, look, this is a very global podcast we're doing because you're in Bangkok, I'm in Melbourne, Australia, and our guest today is joining us from Stockholm, Sweden. So we'll be talking today to Christian Ihre. Christian is the founder or co-founder of a consultancy called Lynxeye. Lynxeye's purpose, if I can use that word, is to work with organizations going through transformational change, helping them to identify their purpose and build relevance with all their audiences through being a purpose-led organization. So the work his organization does is excellent. We've worked alongside them for a couple of clients, and I'm really looking forward to talking to Christian more about his work. The other thing that Lynxeye does is every year they do a piece of research and they publish a report called the Lynxeye Purpose Index. And I've just been going through the 2023 report. It's a really interesting piece of research. It ranks global organizations in terms of how purposeful they are and looks at what they're doing to create their purposefulness and to stay relevant to their market. But it's through the eyes of consumers. It's a piece of consumer research. So that's one of the things I'm really keen to talk to Christian today about is the Lynxeye Purpose Index. So look, I think I should stop talking and we'll get into it. So let's get Christian on the line and talk to him. Hi, Christian. Welcome to Social Capital Matters. Thanks for making time to talk to us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, you've built your whole career through fast-moving consumer goods and brands and developed a very strong practice around improving business performance through purpose. So I just wanted to kick off today by talking about this idea of improving business performance through purpose, because I think a lot of people associate purpose and having a purposeful company with doing some sort of social good, but it's not about adding on a social good, is it really? It's about fundamentally achieving commercial business outcomes. So I thought maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So what the fundamental idea behind our business has been is to help companies unlock a greater meaning for their business. And the underlying reason for that is that not only do we see that by clarifying a company's reason for being, does the company have a easier way to sort of navigate through all the complexities and changes that their world, their business is going through. But it also helps the company to actually drive interest, drive demand, drive a desire to be associated with these companies. There's a very clear correlation between companies that have been very clear in defining the reasons for being and their performance in the market, their performance as employers with higher retention, easier to recruit. So there's a whole lot of good coming out of just being very clear as a company about your why, your purpose.
So we'll talk in a few minutes about some of the companies that are really the global leaders at doing this, because I know you've studied some of the global leaders. But I wanted to talk first about the Lynxeye Purpose Index. That's a report that you've been doing for, I think, 8 years now. And I really like the Lynxeye Purpose Index. I'm in your fan club. I enjoy that report every year that it comes out.
Happy to
And
hear.
it makes a very good point when I looked at the 2023 report. It says that companies that are purpose driven solve real problems for people, real challenges for industry, and real dilemmas for society. And I thought that was a really good way to encapsulate what purposeful companies do. I think it's a really good statement. I thought maybe you could give us some examples of the companies and brands that you see as examples of doing that.
So the first thing, one of the myths around purpose-driven companies is a bit, as you alluded to in the beginning, that these companies are companies that put a lot of emphasis in different kinds of social responsibility activities and so on. Yes, they very often do, but that's not really at the core of a purpose-driven company. When the way that the purposeful brand index works is that it checks to what extent is a company associated with a clear reason to be, a clear why, if you wish. And when you ask people, and we ask people around the world in different countries from Japan to the US, when we ask them what companies are purposeful, they have often a hard time articulate exactly what that company is. But when you start looking at the kind of attributes that are associated with purposeful companies, such as being visionary, having a sense of responsibility, being very trustworthy, being innovative, then you start seeing not only a correlation to what kind of companies that people feel are purposeful, you also see a very clear picture emerge of the kind of companies that are purposeful. So the first thing here is just to be aware of the fact that purposeful companies are companies that solve real problems. If they solve real problems for people, that takes them a long way. If on top of that you see a very clear contribution to society and leading the industry in solving their challenges, then of course you have the full pot, if you wish. Take a company like Tesla, for example.
Yep, good example.
It solves a real problem for consumers. In the beginning, with the pricing that Tesla had, the quality of the car, or at least the sophistication of its technology, that was a luxury car. And for people to be able to drive a luxury car in a guilt-free way, there was no option, right? You either had to choose a luxury car with all the excesses that comes with it, or you have to buy yourself a very simple car that is very minimalistic in the way that it employs natural resources and so on. Here you have Tesla that is actually providing you with both. Great car, great technology, and you can get it in a guilt-free way because it's an electric car. At the same time, Tesla solves an issue for society. It provides an entire ecosystem that helps society move to a fossil-free world in a way and with resources that no one else has been able to deploy. And then you look at the industry and the industry's dilemma, which is to be able to produce cars in a sustainable way that will secure the future for automotive industry beyond the challenges of that a fossil-free world would put on the industry. So here you have a typical company that solves problems for and frustrations for consumers, real dilemmas for industries, and a problem for society. And that's, of course, extremely purposeful in the sense that it plays such a big role in our existence. But then you can take a company like Google. The reason for why they are seen as purposeful is less their impact on society and industry, although they do contribute on that dimension as well. But the core of why Google sees as purposeful is that it makes such a difference for people. The idea of being able to serve people with information and knowledge that is accessible, on the surface of a laptop, is such a huge improvement for people's way of living that only by being so relevant to people, you are seen as purposeful as well. You are really solving frustrations for people, frustrations they had previously on being able to access relevant information when they wanted it and the way they wanted it.
I think that's why I like those that statement so much about solve real problems for people, real challenges for industry, and real dilemmas for society. Because if that's the lens that you're approaching your business with, as you said, there's great business outcomes because you're actually going to meet the needs of consumers, have loyal customers, and so forth. But it's almost like you can't help but deliver social good if you're doing those things. It is going to follow that there will be inherent social good in what you're doing because you are actually solving problems, solving dilemmas, and so forth. And I think that's why I'm probably going to use, I'm going to borrow that statement quite a bit and use it because it's such a good explanation. If people are struggling to go, well, what does a purposeful brand or a purposeful company actually do? I think you've set it up really, really nicely. Now, we talk about customers a lot because it's easy to see how purposeful brands relate to their customers. But of course, it is relevant to all stakeholders. And a lot of the work we're doing and a lot of the work we've done with you and your teams is looking beyond customers. I mean, employees are obviously a key audience, but there are broader audiences as well and broader stakeholders that really respond well to a purposeful brand. I thought it'd be good if you could just talk for a little bit about how you see purpose being relevant to other stakeholders.
Purposeful companies, what we see is that they have a couple of key attributes. One is their leadership. They have what we call an honest intention to lead positive change. So even if you are a company that does everything sort of right, you are minimizing your impact in the world, you're trying to provide as good a product as possible. The dimension of leadership here is extremely important, that you are pioneering with your work in terms of changing a bit of the rules of the game. So there's this, and that you do it with an honest intention to lead positive change, an honest intention to see that things are really pushing people, society, industry in the right direction towards something that is better. And when you do that, then you are actually attracting a whole bunch of stakeholders. One is, for example, and I've seen this very clearly, for example, in power companies that we have worked with. You have regulators going from looking at you with a quite skeptical eye and wondering what is this power company's next move in terms of trying to bend the kind of rules and regulations that we have, to actually becoming a partner in setting a new set of regulations, if you wish, because there is a genuine belief that you as a company has a honest intention to lead that positive change. You become sort of the go-to for industries, for regulators, for partners in defining where should we go as an industry, where should the rules and regulation look at in terms of where they need to change and how they need to change to allow for a new breed of companies being successful within that set of new laws and regulations. So the important thing is, and what really defines these companies is that everyone starts believing that this is not a trick, this is not a sort of smart way to be to get an advantage versus competitors. There is a genuine and honest intention in these companies to really push the world towards something better. And these companies are, of course, betting that by doing so, they will also attract fantastic talent that wants to prosper and stay with the company, that they will be able to work with the best partners in the industry and outside of the industry, because people are attracted to their ways of working. And of course, to get ahead of the game in terms of understanding where regulations is going and so on, because you have a trustful and honest discussions with the society and those who are deciding the rules of the game. And of course, that rewards your shareholders. And of course, it is something that is truly appreciated and rewarded by your customers. So it's this positive circle or positive spin that these companies get that all of a sudden just helps them be so successful and profitable.
I liked your reference to honest intention, because it's the honest intention that is the difference between marketing spin and real, genuine contribution to being a company or a brand who's going to make positive difference in the world. Is there any other ways that you think companies and brands can guard against being accused of purpose washing? Or the other thing I hear people talk about is virtue signaling, which is obviously, closely related. When companies jump on Me Too or Black Lives Matter, and while it's not directly about building purpose, it's more of a short-term way that organizations signal certain ethical beliefs or virtues because they believe that's important for their brand. How can the brands and companies, and clearly the ones you work with, how can they build this purposeful brand but not fall in the traps of just virtue signaling or purpose washing? Is there some golden rules to make sure that you don't fall into that trap?
I don't know if there are golden rules more than exactly what you pointed out, which is the level of honesty in your intentions. If I look at the kind of client situations we have been in, I would say that 3/4 are companies that believe that they didn't have a purpose, that asked us to help them find and integrate that purpose in their business. I would say out of those 3/4, there was actually a purpose. It was just unclear to them what that purpose was. And so when you see that, and when you can sort of uncover what that purpose really is and point the lights towards it, you also see that this idea of actually having an honest intention when your purpose has been sort of embedded in your business for so long, that is a very sort of powerful discovery, because the company gets all of a sudden an understanding that it has a truer and deeper meaning with what it actually does. But then you have the companies that truly have struggled with their sense of purpose. And very often what brings them to us or brings them to seek help is one factor, which is that they cannot retain the right kind of employees. So they are starting to ask, what is it? We pay good salaries. We have a phenomenal HR department. We are very, very cautious about working hours and so on. But we don't get the right people either to recruit or to retain. And that is, of course, people that have the ability to really look into these companies and see to what extent is there a soul, a heart in these companies. To what extent are these companies really dedicated to make a bigger difference in society than just rewarding their shareholders? And when that is the problem, and then therefore people seek or these companies seek help to identify and live by a purpose, you typically use the employees as some kind of test to see, are we, now that we have developed, let's say they have developed now a sense of purpose, they have a clear idea about what that should be and so on. And when they then test that towards their employees, they embed it in different kinds of programs, everything from how they reward their employees to how they define the business plans. And they test these ideas, these ways of working, these behaviors with their employees, and they get thumbs up. That's very often a very good sign that they will survive in the public eye as well, because there's no one to scrutinize your company as much as your own employees.
Exactly.
So I think that could be one, if not a golden rule, at least a good way of really checking whether or not you have deepened enough your purpose in your company and in your ways of working.
I think that's a really good answer, actually, because if the purpose statement or the purpose that you want to go to market with, if you go to market with it and you go externally, but your employees are skeptical about it or cynical, and it doesn't match their experience of the company, it doesn't match their living, breathing experience of the company, it's not going to be credible, and it's very quickly going to be shot down, because if your own people don't believe it, you can't get your customers to believe it. So I think that's a good example. Good example. I wanted to also talk about why now, 2023. Why is this topic getting so much interest in business? Why are you being approached by so many companies and organizations looking for a purpose? Even if they don't know that they're looking for a purpose, they're looking for something. Why do you think there's been a rise in this sort of purposeful leadership, purposeful brands, purposeful companies at this point in time? And I know it's not new. I mean, even just your purpose index, you've been doing that for 8 years, and you've been looking at purpose before that. But I feel that it's sort of getting a lot more attention, and it is very topical. What's going on, and why do you think this idea is resonating more now?
Well, I think there's a good and a bad reason for why that's happening. The bad reason is that there's a growing trust deficit in the world. The kind of institutions that people normally used to trust to guide us, to drive the kind of transformation and changes that were needed for society to continue to prosper, those institutions are at the all-time low when it comes to trust. And with those institutions, I mean political institutions, governments, governmental institutions, religious institutions even.
Yeah.
In many parts of the world, religious institutions are less relevant than them being for hundreds of years. So people basically don't trust the usual sort of guardians of our sense of selves, of our sense of the future, and our sense of values that are needed of protection. At the same time as that is happening, there's a level of worry around in the world about where we're heading, and that we are heading in a direction that seems to be unstoppable. No one seems to be have the power or the vision to actually bring the entire world to a more sustainable future. And with sustainable, I mean now sustainable in its true sense, right?
Mm.
So you have this dilemma that on the one hand, people are truly worried more than ever about where society is going, at the same time as they don't trust the normal institutions to help them, to guide them and guide society towards a better future. In that environment, the ones that are actually being perceived as those who have suffered the least from a lack of trust or loss of trust are companies. And the reason for why companies have lost less, I think, has to do with the fact that one, technology is being seen as the salvation to so many problems. It's companies that sit on those technologies and have the power to use those technologies in ways that can change the direction of the world. At the same time, many consumers, many people think that the fact that we've had a globalization, that we've had a reduction of barriers to entry and so on, consumers feel that they can influence companies in ways that they couldn't do when they only had one choice on the shelf or one channel to look at on TV and so on. If they're not happy with how companies are developing, there is an alternative, and they'll vote with their consumer power, if you wish.
Yes.
And that makes them also feel that they can trust these companies, because they know that the companies know that if they are not behaving in the right way, people will leave.
Mm. And I was just thinking, consumers not only vote, of course, with their dollars and the products they choose to buy, but since the advent of social media, consumers have a much louder voice. It's much easier for consumers to share their bad experience or to be consumer activists against a brand or a company.
Exactly. And the other way around is also true. It's more easy for companies to understand what public sentiment is by following the public sentiment on social media, which was not accessible previously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a company that wants to understand how can I contribute in a way that makes people feel more at ease and where I can be relevant, there is a forum out there to engage with as a company.
Yeah. This void of trust and what you've just described as the opportunity for companies, it also comes with a big responsibility. So I think that links back to what you were saying before about honest intentions, because corporates do have a role and an opportunity to be a force for good. Basically, that's what we were saying. You can be a force for a better world. So, look, before we run out of time, and just to sort of wrap up, I'd like to get sort of one final thought from you for the listeners. When I was reading the Purpose Index, and look, I really recommend to anyone to, we'll put the link in at the end of the podcast to have a read of Christian's Purpose Index. But it's a great ranking, and you rank some of the most purposeful companies according to the research. And of course, there's no surprises that some of the big winners are Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. And it's good to read the write-ups about what they're doing to be more purposeful, because of course your research is how the consumers see them. So it's a very interesting ranking. What I wanted to ask you though is, many companies that I work with and that you work with, they certainly don't have the same resources as Apple or Microsoft or Google. And so people might think, well, it's those really big organizations with those sort of resources who can make some sort of purposeful change. What would you say to smaller organizations who want to get on this journey? How do they start? Well, firstly, is it possible? Is it possible to be a smaller organization and still have a purposeful impact? And where do you start if you haven't got the same budgets and resources as some of those big guys?
No, it's a very good question. And I would say that where you start is really to start within the walls of your existing company. It doesn't matter if it's a small store down the road or if it is a huge multinational company. The process is always the same, which is to define that honest description about why do you exist? What is the reason for why this company should exist? And the interesting thing is that when I talk to entrepreneurs who might be at the very earliest stage of their entrepreneurial journey, especially in countries like Sweden, where it's not really coming forth to earn money. You're supposed to do something bigger than that. You always have this suspicion that an entrepreneur, the only thing he wants to do is get rich and live a life with a pina colada in his hand and enjoy sun and beach. Even when you talk to entrepreneurs, what strikes me is that what truly motivates them is defining a description of their company that goes way beyond just earning money, that has this idea about what role it can play in society. And society tends to be a big word, but in the neighborhood or for the families of those who they are employing. So it is more about being able to define the basic idea about your companies in dimensions that go, and I say beyond because it's not replacing having a profitable business, but it's complementing that perspective with something that is bigger than just earning money. So being able to define your company's reason to be in a societal dimension, maybe even in an industrial dimension. So are you going to do something that could inspire your next door competitor to do things in a different way? And also, what are you truly bringing to people with your products or services that improves their lives, that plays a role in their lives, that solves a real problem in their life? So I think that you can be as small as you want, and you can be hugely purposeful by just having incorporated those perspectives in the way that you define why you're driving your company, why you are evolving your company, why you are investing in that company. And that is sizeless.
Yes, it works on any scale. I think
Yes.
that's a really good answer, and it's a really good way for people to think about it, just to think about what is their contribution, what problem are they trying to solve.
Yeah.
I've only got one final question for you before we wrap up, and it's a very important question. I want to know, can purposeful business leaders and entrepreneurs, can they still have pina coladas? That's a very important question.
Yes, as long as they are biodegradable, I would say.
Excellent. Well, I think you and I should get together at some point soon and have some biodegradable pina coladas.
Yeah, excellent.
Christian, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Kylie. It was a true pleasure.
I knew that having that discussion with Christian was going to be really enjoyable. He's always got a lot of great insights.
Yeah, he really knows his industry and what the purpose of his clients is and how to bring that out of them. I thought it was really refreshing about how honest he is with this stuff. And it says in the purpose index, like, look, purpose isn't for everyone. And it's not something that you can just see and go, oh, that sounds good. We want to do a purpose too. Because if it doesn't come from a place of total transparency and honesty, then you're just blowing hot air and you might as well not even waste resources on it. So I love that transparency about it that really drives the sort of inspires people to come at it from a place of sort of a good heart, good intentions, and honest intent, I think was the word he used. So I like that part of it.
Yeah. I agree with you. And the bit that sort of really stuck out to me as well was the whole idea of there's an opportunity for purposeful companies to be pioneers and thought leaders and to step up and lead with sustainable innovation, to lead with disrupting laggard industries. And in particular, he referenced fossil fuels, but I think this could equally apply across a whole range of sectors. So that opportunity to really take your purpose and make it the platform for leadership, I thought was a great opportunity and a challenge. So certainly a lot to work on there.
Yeah, he's doing great work. And again, like you said, our listeners and viewers should check out the Purpose Index. It's really interesting reading.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today on this discussion around social capital. I look forward to speaking to you again on our next episode.
Social Capital Matters has been a production of Baldwin Boyle Group, hosted by Kylie Taylor and produced and edited by Greg Jorgensen. Find more episodes in our ongoing series on baldwinboyle.com/podcasts, watch on YouTube, or listen wherever you find your podcasts.